Hey everyone, today we're designing a pavilion in Rhino. But here's the twist. We're going to let AI imagine the environment around it. First, I'll walk you through the 3D modeling process in Rhino, which is perfect for creating clean and complex geometry. Then we'll jump into Midjourney to explore how the pavilion could live in nature. Think forests, mountains, who knows what we'll get. And finally, I'll show you how I use Photoshop and AI tools like Magnific to bring everything together into a polished architectural visual. Let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to create two different shapes or geometries. And these are going to be just a simple rectangle and a circle. So I'm going to be typing in rectangle and make sure that we have the grid snap on. Click here on the origin and our rectangle will have the following dimensions. So it's going to be 10 meters in width. So type in 10 and then use the spacebar to enter that value, and then 40 meters in length, like so. Hit the spacebar again, and there we go. Now for the second shape, it's gonna be a circle, so type in circle. I'm going to head out over here, so 10 meters away from our rectangle, and I'll be using a radius of 20 meters, like so. Now I'm going to select the circle, and I'll be offsetting it first by 5 meters, and then I'm going to again hit the spacebar to repeat the last command, because now I want to offset this circle by 2 meters. Now before we move on, I'd like to mention that here in Rhino it's important to have some reference curves or some reference shapes in order to start modeling. And in my case, I use a lot curves and polylines because unlike other software, Rhino handles curves and lines pretty good. So it's a good thing to start off from shapes. Okay, now that I have this, I'm going to create a polyline. And I'll use the grid snap in order to draw a line like so. So I'm basically using this to cut through the middle of the circle. Alright, now I'm going to select everything and type in trim, because I'm going to be getting rid of some lines, as I'm going to be using the blend tools in order to join the circles together to end up with a smooth design. So I'm going to be getting rid of this one, and also this one, and the one at the middle, like so, and this one too. I don't need any of these. Alright, so that's it. You need to have this kind of shape once you trim everything off, and I'm going to be deleting this curve too. Now, I'll be typing in blend CRV, which is blend curve, and we always need to see the command bar as it's going to be telling us what to do next. So in this case, it's telling me to select the curve to blend, which is going to be this guy with this other guy over here. And this window will pop up. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as tangency, and I'm going to drag these control points in order to have a smoother transition between these two curves. If you want, we can go into the top view, so double click on here, where we are going to be able to see this curvature a little bit better. And this looks pretty good. Let's just click on OK and get back to perspective mode. I'll be deleting now this curve because we no longer need it. And because we trimmed these curves, we need to actually join them now. So select all of them and type in join. Now we no longer need the rectangle to be all the way over here. So let's type in polyline, select this intersection. So make sure that you have the O snap turned on and also the intersection tool also activated. I'm going to draw a perpendicular polyline over here. And now I'll be selecting all of this rectangle and typing in trim again because I no longer need this part of it. I'm also going to be selecting this curve and deleting it, and make sure that these three curves are actually joined together. Now it's time to extrude our curves. So this rectangle is going to be basically our axis. Select this guy, click on this extrude option on the gumball, and if you cannot see the gumball, make sure that you have the gumball turned on down here. So click once and type in 6, which is 6 meters, and then select these guys over here. Again, click on the gumball, and they are only going to be having a height of 2.5. Now the whole idea of this pavilion is that the geometries are going to be blending nicely with each other. So again, I'm going to be using, instead of blend CRV, I'll be using blend SRF. Alright, so now it's asking us to select the first edge, which is going to be this one, and notice that I'm going to be clicking on this top side. Now it's asking me to select the second edge. So now I'm going to be clicking roughly on the same position as I did over here, which was on the top side. Therefore, let's click right here. Now in this case, make sure that you have curvature turned on because it's going to be giving us this nice smooth transition between these two geometries. Let's click on OK. And again, to repeat the same command, I'm going to be pressing the spacebar, like so. And I'll be doing the same thing, but on this other side. So let's click here and then over here and click on OK. Alright, awesome. Now for our next step, what I want to do is to close this surface, or to give a roof to it actually. So again, I'm going to be typing in blend SRF, but in this case, I'm going to be using the chain edges because I'm going to be selecting more than one edge on each side. So let's select this one, and this is going to be this first segment. This is going to be the other segment, and now hit the spacebar, and we'll be selecting this other side like so. Hit the spacebar again, and in this case, this looks a bit weird. So instead of curvature, we are going to be selecting position. So position 1 and 2. These two numbers only refer to the sides. So 1 is to this side on the left, and 2 is going to be the side on the right. So click on OK. And the same thing will go for our semicircle. Therefore, type in blend SRF again. And in this case, I actually want to blend the edges at the bottom. So let's select this guy over here and this guy over here. Make sure that we are on position again and click on OK. And as you can see, we have ended up with this smooth geometry that is looking pretty good. So we are going to be having a sub level downwards, and we can actually use multiple methods in order to drag this down. And the most simple method is actually to just select the edges with Ctrl plus Shift like so. And then just click once on the move tool from the gimbal, and let's move it -2 meters. That's a bit too little, so let's go back with Ctrl plus Z and let's try -4. And this looks much better. And because Rhino uses NURBS, this is going to be a smooth transition. We don't have any errors on the surface, as you can see. Now we no longer need the curves that we started off with. So what we need to do is to just select them with Cell CRV. So select curves and delete them. And it's going to add a little bit more of detail to have some thickness on our surfaces. So let's select these two guys and type in offset SRF. So offset surface, and the direction of the thickness need to go inwards. However, on this surface at the left, we see that the arrows are pointing out. So what I'm going to do is just click twice in here, or just click once actually, and it's going to flip the direction of those arrows. So now we have what we wanted. The distance of this thickness is going to be 0.5. So let's just type in 0.5, and maybe it's a little bit too much. So let's go back again with Ctrl plus Z and offset SRF again. So offset surface again, flip these arrows, and instead of 0.5, we could have 0.3, and then just hit enter twice. Now, because this volume is going to be our entrance or our axis, I need to delete this surface. To select individual surfaces in Rhino, we need to use the Ctrl plus Shift keys like so. Now select all of these surfaces, make sure that they are joined together. So you can select multiple surfaces with Shift and then type in join. Now offset SRF again to give some thickness. Make sure that they are going inwards, because if they don't, it's not going to match with this object on our left side. Again, 0.3 will do. And there we go. This is looking really, really good. Now we can leave this surface as a ramp, but it might be too steep. So what I'm going to do is give it some thickness. And instead of having a ramp, I'm actually going to be having some steps on it. And the easiest way to give it some thickness is with a gimbal. You can use the gimbal or just type in offset SRF again or offset surface. But in this case, we are only going to be having a thickness of 0.2. And to create those steps, I'll be selecting this object again and typing in contour. Now go ahead and select the bottom vertex of our object and now drag this line all the way over here. And as you can see, we are not dragging it on the Z axis. So what I need to do is to press Shift like so, and then click once. So Shift will just snap our cursor to the Z axis. And the distance between these contours are going to be 0.5. Actually, that was way too little, so let's try that again. Select this object, click on this intersection, and then use the Shift key to snap this to the Z axis. And instead of 0.5, let's go with 0.2. And there we go. In order to see these curves that we just generated, let's isolate them with the command isolate. And extrude them up with the gimbal again by 0.2, and we have our steps done. And make sure that you don't have floating surfaces like these two, so select them both with Shift and delete them with the delete key. And it's going to be a good idea to grab these guys and group them together in case we need to select all of them. Type in show and get rid of this ramp, which we no longer needed, which is this one. And there we go. We can now change the viewport from shaded to Arctic like this. And again, we can select all of the curves with Celsius V and delete them. Okay, this is looking very, very nice and smooth. But we might need to create an extra surface at the bottom so that this doesn't look that empty. And it's going to be actually really easy to create it. I'm going to go back to shaded. In order to fill this hole here, I'm going to just type in circle, grab this point and type in 20. So now let's isolate this circle. So isolate and create a box. So let's go ahead and create this box. Doesn't really matter the size of it. And let's drag it all the way down. Select this circle and also drag it down like this. But notice that I just used the cut tool on our gumball. So not the extrude one or the move option, but the cut tool like this. Just drag it down and we have created a void like so. We only need the inside of this circle, so both of these surfaces, we can select them with Ctrl plus Shift and now type in extract SRF. So extract surface, delete this box and we end up with our sub-level geometry. We can select everything and join it and now click on show. And as you can see, we actually overdid it a little bit. So I'm going to be selecting this bottom surface and drag it upwards so that we match the end of our steps. So again, let's go ahead and look this on an Arctic mode. And now we can get rid of all of the curves. So Celsius V and delete them. And there we go. This is looking great. So we are done with our pavilion. Now let's bring some AI into this story. Okay, so let's jump into Midjourney. And for this second part of this video, what I'm going to do is to create an environment for my pavilion. And as you can see, I've already tried out some of them. And because I already did a city version of this for our Instagram, and by the way, if you want to follow us on Instagram, check out the link on the description. So because we already did that version, what I want to do is to create a nature version of this pavilion now. Let's type in imagine. And first of all, we need to decide what kind of architecture or the architecture design this pavilion has. The closest one is a spiral design, right? So let's type in an architectural pavilion. Now let's type in spiral design, fluid. And I also want it to be realistic. So I'm just going to be typing in photograph. And again, architecture design so that it knows what we're looking for. I'm also going to be throwing in Arch Daily as it's heavily related to architecture, obviously. And now our camera. So it's going to be bird's eye view or aerial shot. If you want, we do have sub-level, so let's type in sub-levels. And now where do we want it? We wanted it in nature. Now we can also add the materials that we want. So for example, concrete and nature. And because V7 just came out and it's way better than the last version, I'm going to be typing in V7 and I'm going to also add raw in here. And that's basically all the details that we want. So click on enter and let's see what we can get. Alright, and these are the results. Now Midjourney is trying to create some circulation or some pedestrian walkway that goes along the design of our spiral pavilion, but I want a little bit more of inspiration so that I can add that type of design to our 3D model. So what I'm trying to do in here is to create the initial design of my pavilion and then get a little bit more of inspiration of how the environment of such design could be. So again, let's go ahead and type in imagine, and I'm going to be copying all of this. So Ctrl C and Ctrl V, but in this case, I'll be adding a few more words, which is going to be circulation and pedestrian. So this is basically how Midjourney works. Based on the first results that you get, you'll keep refining your prompt. Alright, so I get an idea of where this is going. It's trying to add some kind of walkway around the vegetation in order to match the whole geometry of the pavilion, which makes actually sense. So I'm going to go back to Rhino and try to create that type of design. So let's go back. Now let's go all the way to the top view, and I'll be using just a simple interpolate curve command in order to create this type of exterior circulation. So something like this. It doesn't really have to be that precise for now, as we'll be refining it later on. So I need a little bit more of fluidity in here. so that this ends up a bit more smooth. And we can do that by manipulating these control points. I can get rid of this control point over here. Okay, something like this. And now let's type in offset. Remember that the width of this was 10 meters, so you can go ahead and type in 10. And because I offsetted this curve, we can see that this one has a lot more of control points, which is going to be a little bit hard for us to manipulate. And what we can do about it is to go ahead and type in rebuild. And as you can see, we have 43 control points, which is way too much. So let's go all the way down to 20. And hit on preview to see how the curve is gonna look, and we can actually lower way more. So let's go ahead and type in 10, and this looks better. So click on OK, and now I can just drag this point over here and just move this one down here. So we have a smooth looking curve. Now what we need to do is to create a surface out of it, but as you can see, the control points are not aligned on the same construction plane. So let's go back to shade it. And in order to fix this, I'm going to just type in set PT, so set points. And I want to set all of the control points only on the Z-axis, so we can uncheck X and Y like so. Click OK, and we can snap it down here. Now select both of them and type in loft in order to create this nice organic walkway that goes along with the design of our architecture. Okay, so now we need to go for some vegetation. So for this, I'm just going to be creating a plane like so, and I'll be splitting it. So type in split with the walkway that we just created, and also with the outline of our sub-level. So go ahead and click on enter, and we can get rid of both of these. And we have this plane where our vegetation is going to be. Now, one thing before we jump into our other AI tool, which is going to be PromeAI, is that we need to define some materials. And in my case, I use Enscape because I have access to instant materials. So you can go ahead and download Enscape. It has a 1-week free trial version. And once you download it, you'll have this tab in here, which says import predefined materials. I'm going to click on it and go into the grounds section, and I'll be selecting a type of grass, which is going to be just this one. So let's go back. I'm going to be typing in materials in here. Select this plane and right click and assign to objects. And it looks a little bit too big. So in order for PromeAI to know what I'm doing, I'm going to go into properties and change this from surface to box so that it notices that this is actually some grass. Okay, let's go to Arctic, and this is going to be enough for the AI to notice what I'm going for. For this part of the process, I used PromeAI to generate several variations of the pavilion, using the Midjourney results as a reference. If you're curious about how PromeAI works, feel free to check out our dedicated video on that. Once I picked the versions that felt the most accurate and visually interesting, I brought everything into Photoshop for some matte painting, and then finished it off with a final polish using Magnific AI. You can also watch my previous video if you want to see more about how I use Magnific AI in my workflow. And here's the final result. And that's it, from a simple Rhino model to a fully visualized design with AI. It's crazy how much you can explore with just a few tools. If you want to learn how to do this step by step, from modeling in Rhino to rendering with AI and Photoshop, I've got a full workshop where I teach the entire process. You'll find the link in the description, or feel free to DM me if you have any questions. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's a lot more coming soon.